and Mr. Lamassoure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a privilege and honor for me to welcome this Next Generation Internet Summit here in the European Parliament on behalf of President Jerzy Buzek and all my present colleagues present in this room. We are very proud as members of this Parliament to have played a role in the setting up of this Atomium European Institute, which is a very important and influential network for the most prominent European scientists. Just, if you allow me, a few comments from my part to complement and elaborate on what has just been said by the commissioners, and I am happy to pay tribute to their work. Science is now living through a golden age. Progress of fundamental knowledge in the infinitely small as well as in the infinitely large. Explosion of technological applications upon communications, materials, daily life. Scientific and technological revolutions by the interconnection of disciplines. For example, the so-called boson of Professor Higgs, dark matter, exoplanets, sequencing of human genome, hybridization, humans machine, stem cells, nanomaterials, artificial intelligence, which has been already mentioned, are some examples. This expansion of science, in the meaning of expansion of the universe, requires from us, the policymakers, three types of moral duties. The first is to give its right place to science in politics, in our decision-making. Too many political decisions are still based on incorrect, partial, biased, intuitive information. Just one example. I was very struck when I was in charge of the budget in the government of my country a few time ago, to note that economic policy lies to less reliable data than meteorology weather forecast does. We do not know what the weather will be tomorrow. That's clear. But at least we do know if it is raining now or if the weather is nice today. Well, we have learned only last week what the accurate rate of growth of French industry was 3 years ago. So, don't let ourselves be deceived by the big data mirage. It all depends on the quality of the data. When it comes to economy, controversies between neo-Keynesian and supply-side theorists still remind us too often of theological debates between heliocentrisms and geocentrisms 3 or 4 centuries ago. Nobel Prize winner John Tyrrell's book, L'économie du bien commun, Economics of Common Good, makes a good assessment between what the contemporary economy contains of science and ideology. Second duty, to give science all its place, but nothing more than its right place. Science is a means, the well-being of mankind is the purpose. However, whether it is big data, genetic medicine, or weapons still to be invented, science gives us an unprecedented power on life quality, on death, but also on the biological and social identity of the people of our time. JFK has been quoted. I will quote him again. In its wonderful inaugural address, JFK quoted Samuel Pizain's words, "Man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life." It was in 1960. he would add today, and the power to choose and change all forms of life. It's not for scientists to decide on the collective use of their research. It is indeed for policymakers democratically elected. It took us centuries to make science independent of religion. It is not to transform now science into religion. The Brazilian flag reminds us of the glare of positivist philosophers for whom science was to substitute for religion. Scientism was a wrong way. Carried away by the enthusiasm of their discovery, today's Californian researchers pretend that their science is able and allowed to prescribe the future of mankind. It is the current debate now between transhumanism and post-humanism. But Europe is the birthplace of humanism, and it must remain so. Science will never be able to give the answer to the fundamental questions of human anguish, the meaning of life. Third and last duty for us, politicians, policymakers, the fight against the new obscurantism. It is the opposite risk of overestimating the role of science. In all our societies, a form of resentment has been developed against progress and against science. Originally was the fright of researchers themselves upon the possible consequences of their works. Let us remember Professor Oppenheimer reciting to himself the words of the Indian wisdom book, Bhagavad Gita, in front of the first nuclear explosion at Los Alamos in 1945. Now I become death, the destroyer of worlds. Within the public opinion, a mixture of remorse about 20th century tragedies, of resentment about the incapacity of science to cope with the most serious diseases, and kind of giddiness about too rapid progress, leads to a prejudice against science, or, which is worst, to a classification of what's good and what's bad, morally, in the progress of science, or even in categories of science. For instance, all forms of chemistry, of nuclear physics, of nanoscience are demonized as such, not their outcome, but as such. Their scholars or specialists are considered as sponsored by lobbies. Somehow it is civilization regress. For the good use of science, we do need collective ethics. It's probably one of the most urgent and serious issues of this century of globalization. How to work on it, whom with, how to define common rules, how to make these rules work. This network is a prefiguration of how to approach this major issue of our time. Be thanked for this, Mr. Chairman, and all of you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamassoure. So not only purpose and values, but also the method with which to knit them together.